And so I think as a business owner, you really don't want your income tied to some kind of an hourly that somebody else is paying. It's just too much control. It's not something that I've ever been comfortable with. It also commoditizes you. Okay, this is a second video in a series on pricing for your business. So let's talk a little bit about business models. And I'm talking about in the most basic sense here. When you're working as what I'm going to call a digital creative, for lack of a better term at the moment, there's three ways, essentially. Well, there are four. I'll give you a little fourth one as a little tangential sideline. But there are three main ways that people price themselves: retainer, a project model, and an hourly model. So I'm the biggest fan of the project model. I think there's times that the other solutions are appropriate, and that fourth tangential piece is working on a commission model. So let's talk about a retainer model. Retainers can be great, especially if you're somebody who's new in business or you're risk averse and you really like to know that there's a certain amount coming in each month. The challenge that I have with retainers is they often can get slippery inside them. They have to be really clearly delineated, or there's too much room for scope creep. And I've also found that people can get very dissatisfied inside of retainers because they can grow very stale. So it's important to know when you get into a retainer situation with a client, what the parameters are, what they're really expecting. Sometimes that's easier to do if you've worked with them already and you move into a retainer, but it doesn't often work that way. So you want to be really clear on, what the expectations are, what the communication style is going to be, really what they expect from you. And, if that's something that you like and it makes you feel good, go for it. You can even do a mixed model. I know people who have a couple of retainers and then they keep other time open for project work. So hourly, I feel, is a trap, because it doesn't benefit you, the creator, the provider, the contractor, however you want to think of yourself, because there are two ways that you can make more money in your business. One is you can raise your rates. The other is you can get faster at something. If it takes you, it took you 5 hours to do something last year and it takes you 2.5 hours to do it this year, you've effectively doubled your rates. Inside an hourly situation, you actually get punished for getting faster because you make less money for doing the same thing. And so I think as a business owner, you really don't want your income tied to some kind of an hourly that somebody else is paying. It's just too much control. It's not something that I've ever been comfortable with. It also commoditizes you, gives somebody, this certain control over you because they want to know now what you're doing inside that time. And as a business owner, you're putting up with a lot to have the financial potential and the time freedom potential. And so, you don't want to just sell that too cheaply. Now, there is a point, though, in hourly, from my point of view, in terms of project work. And that is, I believe you should have an internal hourly rate because you need to know how much you're making. And in order to know how much you're making, a key business metric is how long things take you to do. So in my work as a copywriter, for example, like let's say it takes me 20 hours to craft some piece of copy. I know that I have an internal hourly rate that I need to meet in order to make the money that I need to make in order to keep my business afloat and my life afloat. And so I don't always use that, as an exact calculator, like, this project's going to take me 20 hours, but it gives me a sense, if you time yourself periodically, of how long something actually does take you and how much you profit. Because the easiest thing to lose in business is time. Especially if you're in a creative endeavor and, you tweak and you fix and you spend a little more time than you should. And time just has a way of slipping away. And if you're not carefully tracking it, you might think something took you 6 hours and maybe it took you 10, and if your internal hourly rate is $200, you've just lost $800. So it's really important to know how long things take you. It's a crappy ass task. It sucks. It's no fun to do, but you need to do it. You need to do it periodically, or you're not being true to yourself or to your business. In my view, you owe yourself that. And so on a project basis, it's a really interesting thing because now what we get more into is, expertise status, delivering value. Because a project, inside of a project, a lot of different things can happen. And if you're talking to several people about a certain type of project, if you're talking to me and you're talking to this person and you're talking to that person, we're probably all going to have a different approach and maybe a very different price for the same project. And it will depend on our experience how seasoned we are, how familiar we are with that, type of industry or this type of project. And some of it is, how much, how much you are willing to charge and how much you actually feel that it's worth. And so the project work gives you an opportunity to expand inside of your projects. It also gives you the opportunity when you are scoping a project to create tiers of project, right? So there's sometimes you're in a discovery call with the client and there's like the needs to haves and the nice to haves. And sometimes, at least for me, if someone says, well, this is what I'm here for, but, we also, it would be nice to have this and we'd like to talk about it. For me, if we do this and the nice to haves during the same project, it's better for me. And I can do it more cost effectively because my head's already in the project. With copy, you have to get very deep into the, all the ideas and all the concepts and all the research. And once you step away from that, you forget it and you have to get back into it because you'll have done multiple projects, in the interim. And so that, doing it by the project allows me to tier my projects so that, here's the things that we talked about that you absolutely want. And if we include these things in the project as well and sign them as part of one agreement, you get a better deal. And here's why. And often that makes, those things more enticing for them to do right away, gives me a bigger, meatier project, which is obviously more money as well. And you can, advance in those projects. Like just as an example, something that I did quite commonly was a lead gen funnel. So I could get, as I got more sophisticated and I got more results for clients and I had more experience creating them and I knew what more of the variables were, I brought a lot more value to the table. I didn't bring a whole lot more certainty because there all of this, the 3 rules of marketing are test, test, and test. I still had to experiment with things, but I had a much broader understanding and a much deeper confidence from results I had already gotten. So I am a fan of project work. A couple of caveats to doing that or to writing up scopes with whatever model you're using. I suggest that you sleep on your scope. Whatever the price is on Monday, it feels too high, and on Tuesday, it feels too low. I can't tell you how many times I've slept on something. And, when I created it the day before, I was anxious. I wanted to get the project. I was wondering, is this the right price? Is that the right price? Are these the right deliverables? And by the next morning, I would feel like, okay, I know what I am willing to do this project for, what will make me feel good. And it's often not the number that I came up with on Monday night. And of course, that the story here is that these proposals would get accepted, so I could have sent it on Monday, maybe for, 12,000 and on Tuesday for 15,000 and, what is it, 18 hours and $3,000, just as an example. So always sleep on proposals if you can. See how they feel to you the next day before you come up with something final. So I hope that helps you think about, which way you want to go with your projects. Please consider timing yourself so you know how long things are actually taking you. It may actually resolve some issues for you about capacity or overwhelm. Because it's surprising to see, where time actually does go. So I hope this was helpful. Pricing video number 3 will be next week. And if you want to know when that drops, subscribe and click the bell. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.